Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my GameWeek 18 transfer plans, but really with a specific focus on Saka replacements, as it looks like he might have picked up an injury which will see him out for a little while. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, welcome to a Sunday morning video, which I don't usually do, but it is Christmas, hence the silly hat, which means I thought I'd slip an extra video in there for you. And if you do like these Sunday morning uploads, please do smash that like button. And also, if you've not subscribed to my channel, if you're new or you've watched a few videos and you've just not bothered subscribing, as a Christmas present to me, please do consider subscribing. I massively appreciate it. And so what is the purpose of the video today? It's because Bukayo Saka looks like he's picked up what looks to be a pretty serious injury. And even if it's not serious, because we've got 2 deadlines in the next 6 days, he's probably going to miss at least 2 game weeks unless he suddenly miraculously recovers. So if you did miss the game, he crossed the ball with his right foot, I believe it was, and immediately clutched his hamstring and put his arm up straight away to the bench and went off immediately. Didn't try and come back on. And then after the game, he was on crutches and his movement looked extremely limited. Now, we know that players are often in boots and on crutches after the games, just from a precautionary measure. Arteta then did say that he's a little bit worried about this one. So, by all accounts, a lot of the sort of online physios seem to think this is sort of 4 to 6 weeks. I don't want to speculate too much, but like I said, even if it's only like 10 days to 2 weeks, it might well be enough to keep him out for 3 or 4 game weeks. So for me, he's probably looking like a sell. But regardless, even if he does miraculously recover, it's still worthwhile discussing the midfielders in FPL because it feels like there could be some upside and some possible differentials in the upcoming week. So the purpose for today's video is to look at the midfielders at the 3 different price brackets. So I've got sort of 4.5 to 6, the cheap midfielders. I've then got that sort of middle price bracket with the likes of Gordon, Mbeumo, Bowen. And then I'll look at the more expensive midfielders and discuss whether it's worth paying the premium price. And then I'll discuss what I'm probably planning on doing with my team at the end. I will just note I'm recording this very late on Saturday, ready for a Sunday morning, which means it's extremely loud in Nottingham city centre where I live. So if there is some background noise, I apologise. And also, I prep quite well for my videos to make sure that I know what I'm saying. Apart from putting the graphics together, there's not been much prep. So I hope you enjoy it and we'll see how it goes. So at this first price point, like I said, 4.5 to 6, I think this is the most exciting and interesting price point, and I wouldn't get too worried about the prices. Like, if you think someone in this price bracket offers really good value, you don't have to buy a more expensive asset just because Saka costs a lot of money, right? It's worthwhile going for a cheaper asset because it might free up some potential future routes to invest in the Arsenal or Liverpool defence or get an Isak and a Jackson alongside each other. So that will give you plenty of potential, so don't feel like you have to overspend. In this table, what I've got is their minutes per game over the last 5 to give us a bit of an idea about are they getting good minutes at the moment. Their non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 over the last 5. We've got their non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 over the season to see, again, are there more like recent trends in the right direction? What has their data been like across the season? I've got their fixture difficulty according to Fantasy Football Hub from GameWeek 18 to 22. And I've got my own Raptor ranking, which means the order in which I would select to bring them in without seeing the context of the rest of your team. So hopefully that table makes sense. And for me, the best cheap midfielder, and this is driven a little bit because he's just scored today on the day of me recording this, is Ismaila Sarr. But he just looks really good at the moment. And when I think about what do I want good fixtures, which Crystal Palace now have. I want good goal threat, and he has comfortably the highest XG on this list per 90. I want good minutes as well, and he got another 90 minutes today. When the likes of Mateta's been going off early, Eze's obviously struggling with an injury himself, but Ismaila Sarr's minutes have been exceptionally good, and he's playing with confidence as well. There's very little more that I would want from an asset other than further routes to points. So he's not on penalties, he's not on set pieces. So that does limit his appeal slightly to me. But when you see what you can do from open play, so over the last 5, he's got the second best data on this list. Actually, it's only Murphy that has slightly better data. We'll discuss him in a second. And across the season, out of all of these cheaper players, he's got comfortably the best data. So for me, Ismaila Sarr is the standout. He's obviously gone up my rankings based on last week because he's got that more difficult fixture out the way now. So for me, he is definitely first. I still love Ahmad. I'm, again, recording this on Saturday night for a Sunday morning upload. So I've not seen all of the Sunday games. But as long as Ahmad continues to start in that number 10 role, which we think he will, what more do you potentially want from an asset? I mean, he's just playing incredibly well. He's playing very advanced. He actually took a couple of corners in the game against Spurs in the EFL Cup. So if he starts to add set pieces to his arsenal, that just makes him even stronger. This is more of a jump on quickly sort of player. And what I mean by that is usually I want loads of game weeks of data and I want to see a little bit more from a player. But Ahmad in recent games is in that number 10 role. Amorim is starting to get a tune out of the United attack a little bit more. And therefore, whilst his data, if like you compare his data to Enzo to Sarr, it doesn't massively stand out. I think it will start to really improve. And when I think about potential upside, out of all of the players on this list, the two players that stand out for me are Sarr and Ahmad. Because of the position they're playing in, they're actually both playing in an extremely similar position where they're basically playing as a right 10. And I love that position because it allows them to get involved in the creativity, but they're also getting quite close to goal. So for me, I don't think Ahmad is quite as good as Ismaila Sarr, just because I slightly prefer the fixtures for Sarr. And I also think he's got slightly greater goal threat. But I don't think there's that much in it. He's obviously a little bit cheaper as well. I still think Enzo is top 3. I just think with Enzo, you've got a bit of everything. And I feel like out of all of the players on this list, he's got the most routes to points because he's got the set pieces as well, right? He takes in-swinging corners and in-swinging free kicks. You can see that across the last 5, he's played 90 in all of them. There has been a massive uptick in his data. There was actually a quote going around from a few days ago where he's literally said that Maresca is asking him to play closer to goal and that he loves that he now has the ability to score goals and get assists. You love hearing that from a player, that they've literally got their mind on trying to get more attacking returns. It's exactly what you want. He's captaining the side in the absence of Reece James, which will probably be for the rest of the season. According to Fantasy Football Hub, he's got the best fixtures on this list out of all of the players that we are looking at here. So, I mean, Enzo could arguably even be slightly higher. The only reason that I've got him in 3rd as opposed to 1st or 2nd is just because I think he's got slightly lower goal threat than Sarr and Ahmad. I think he's got slightly more creativity, but slightly less goal threat. For me, they are the standout 3 players at the moment, Sarr, Ahmad, Enzo. Rodgers obviously got a 14 points. I currently sat on my bench, very painful. He's still a fine asset. I don't think that this suddenly makes Rodgers the player to own. I don't think it suddenly means that you have to keep or buy Rodgers. But will Rodgers continue to get returns? Yes. And his minutes have been so incredibly good. His data is pretty decent. You can see here across the season, slightly better than Ahmad and Enzo. Across the last 5, no, it doesn't compare with Enzo or Sarr, but it's actually slightly better than Ahmad. So there isn't an issue with Rodgers' data. His minutes are good. Fixtures-wise, they're not perfect, but if you can rotate him in the correct weeks with someone like an Ahmad or an Enzo, then his fixtures are actually very good. They've got some really strong ones coming up. Rodgers is one of those players, it feels boring because we've all owned him for a long time, but if you do still own him, I see no issue taking him out. Now, would I look to target him and bring him in ahead of Enzo, Ahmad or Sarr? No, I probably wouldn't. So for that reason, I've got him in 4th, but I still think he's really great. A little bit lower down, Iwobi's fine. I mean, you've missed the Southampton game. He then goes into Chelsea. Is this the best entry point for Iwobi? Probably not. Let's see how he gets on the Sunday, but I still have no issue with buying him. He's got really good minutes. The data's just not quite there. I feel like if you were going to go Iwobi, the entry point was really the Southampton game, or you wait a week and then go again in game week 19. I have no issue with him, though, and I do think he'll tick along with the odd return here and there. Murphy obviously stands out because he's 4.9 million and he's had so many attacking returns in the last couple of weeks against Leicester and Ipswich. Again, though, it does slightly feel like you've missed the entry point with Murphy. They've had suspensions, which has led to his minutes being very good. You've had the best 2 fixtures as well. The fixtures actually aren't bad coming up for Newcastle. We'll discuss Gordon a little bit later. So I don't mind having Murphy and buying Murphy at 4.9. But you can see here, his minutes per game is never going to be perfect. He won't start every game. You've missed the 2 best fixtures. And whilst his data has been fantastic over the last 5, they've had the fixtures that you would expect would lead to very good data over the last 5. So I have no issue buying him, but with the absence of like a certainty of minutes that you get with some of the other players like Iwobi, like Enzo, even to some extent Ahmad and Sarr, I just don't know that I could justify bringing him in, especially when Enzo's only 0.2 more, I think. I was going up to 5.2. No, he is 5.1 still. Ahmad 5.3. Like, for me, I'm just not sure that I can justify that in there. You've got Semenyo and Cliver. Again, I've not seen our Bournemouth get on against Manchester United, but neither of them blow me away. I mean, Semenyo's got better open play, goal threat, and assist threat, but Cliver has the penalty. Semenyo has the slightly better minutes. I don't think I would go out and buy either of them. Smith Rowe, by the way, hasn't taken a shot in 5 weeks. I couldn't believe that when I was looking at the data earlier. 5 weeks, he's not had a single shot. I mean, it's mind-blowing. So for me, no, I wouldn't be buying Smith Rowe. And again, you've missed the entry point. And I suppose you could go out there and buy Dibbling. Let's see how they get on under the new manager. It might be that they become a really attacking outfit. And he's only 4.5 million, but that would be if you really need to free up funds. For me, as I said towards the start, I just don't think... I couldn't look past Sar, Ahmad, Enzo. I think with Enzo, there are other really good Chelsea assets like Jackson, Palmer, even a defender. So I feel like with Enzo, you could definitely own 3 other good Chelsea assets. Could you own 3 Palace? Maybe. Munoz, Henderson, Mateta, Eze at some point. Will you own 3 Man United? That one I'm less sure of, because really it's Bruno and Ahmad, and I don't think the defenders are nailed enough to really want to go there. So maybe Ahmad is the safer one. For me, I am looking at potentially bringing in a cheap mid this week, and Ismaila Sarr stands out. I just think he's got a really high ceiling, and I like the way that he's playing. Let me know if you are interested in any of the cheap mids. Let's now take a look at those mid-price ones. So guys, then moving on to the next price point, which is 6.2 million all the way to 7.6 million. This tends to be the price point and position in FPL where you find those real gems and the highest upside. If I think back to the past, when we've often had like hat tricks for players, it's been the likes of Maddison, Bowen, Foden. I remember 2 seasons ago, I wildcarded in game week 8 or 9, and in the week that I wildcarded the week after, I had Bowen, Maddison, and Foden all got over 15 points for me in a single week. This often feels like that price where you're not paying a premium, but you're getting better than what you expect from those cheap assets. But right now, there really isn't a standout asset to bring in. When we think about, again, what I'm looking for from an asset, minutes, preferably set pieces, maybe penalties, fixtures, data, eye test, none of the players tick everything on the list. And I actually think that is probably a good thing, because if there was a standout option that ticks off everything we're possibly looking for and more, well, then I'm probably not sat here making this video. I'm just like, well, you obviously just bring in that player. So it's probably a good thing, but let's go through each of them. I've got Anthony Gordon in first because he's probably the closest you'll get to having everything. Newcastle are looking very good at the moment. His minutes are largely very secure. 72 minutes per game over the last 5 because obviously he had 1 game on the bench. I don't expect that to happen very often. The data over the last 5 is the second best on this list. Only Bowen has higher. And I really like the fact that, I think Newcastle starting to tick. I actually think the next 3 games for them, they look trickier on paper, but they're actually perfect for Gordon and Isak. They're very transition-based games. They're games where I could see a lot of goals against the likes of United and Spurs. So I actually don't mind the fixtures overall for Gordon. I just feel like Gordon's the closest you'll get to having a bit of everything. And Mbeumo's in second. I don't love this because I've just sold him Mbeumo. But realistically, he's getting 90 minutes. He's taking more shots now, which is good. His creativity is still very good. He's still on corners. He's still on penalties. And Brentford still score goals. I mean, they didn't today for the first time at home this season. They actually struggled a little bit against Forest, but Forest are a very good team. And they're not going to win every game, obviously. So, again, Mbeumo is probably even closer than Gordon in terms of having everything you want from an asset, but the fixtures just really aren't there for Mbeumo, which is why he's in second. I've then got Jota and Diaz in third and fourth. I need to see what the lineup is basically against Spurs, because without seeing the Spurs lineup, like if Diaz and Jota are both on the bench, well, then they are all systems go for Leicester at home on Boxing Day. That feels like an incredibly high upside fixture. And then it's West Ham after that. I mean, what is the chances that Jota... I mean, Diaz is maybe more interesting just because I guess he's not just come back from injury. But even so, his minutes, like if I read them out, 62, 24, 90, 28, 90, 23, 90. He's literally start, bench, start, bench, start, bench, start, bench. I don't know. I reckon he probably starts against Spurs, but you see what I mean? You're getting like 1 in every 2. And then with Jota, why are you expecting that you get any more from Jota when he's just come back from injury? If Diaz isn't even starting every game, Gakpo is, but his minutes are like 60 to 70. I think best case scenario, what you get from Jota, and this is best case scenario, is starting against, and I don't think this will happen, Leicester and West Ham, and getting like 60 to 70 minutes in each. Or you might get 70 in one and 30 in the other. So you're getting 90 minutes of Jota versus probably 180 or 170 minutes of Gordon. I don't even know what scenario would make me want to bring in Jota. Maybe, let's say that Jota gets 20 to 30 minutes off the bench against Spurs, scores again, and it looks like he's going to start versus Leicester, then yeah, it's definitely a high upside pick. But you're going to want to transfer him out soon anyway. Liverpool have a double game week coming up in game week 24, probably. And then you might say, well, that's even more reason to own him. But do you expect Jota to start both in the double? Last season, we were massively burned by bringing in, I can't remember who it was, maybe Diaz, Jota, Darwin Nunez, and I don't think any of them ended up starting both in the double. So I just don't think this is for me, especially around Christmas, especially with midweek deadlines, and especially with a player that's just come back from injury. The reason he's in third, though, is objectively, he's probably got the highest ceiling out of anyone on this list. I would say, in fact, he does. We know that Jota is a hat-trick kind of player. Like, he will go out there and get you 3 goals in 10 minutes. He's that sort of... And not many other players you can get for that price that has that same explosive ability. So you have to be a very specific type of manager to want to take this punt. And it is a very risky one. And it is one that will probably end up backfiring in 2 or 3 weeks. But let's say his minutes are slightly better than we think. I don't mind it. So I've got Jota and Diaz in 3rd and 4th, mainly because the other players below, they've all got issues. Like Eze's currently injured. We don't even know if he'll be back. I've put him in there because if he is fit and available, it's worth a discussion. But why would you not own Ismail Assar for 0.9 million less? He's playing, he's getting more minutes. He looks in better form. He's got better goal threat. Eze's not even on penalties anymore. He doesn't even take all set pieces for them. I'd rather have Ismail Assar than Eze. On Bowen, Bowen's got the joint best minutes and the best data over the last 5. But the fixtures really aren't there. Like, if we bring up Bowen's fixtures, because he's got a great fixture this week, by the way. Fantastic entry point against Southampton. But then it's Liverpool, Man City, Fulham, Palace, Villa, Chelsea, Brentford, Arsenal. I mean, the fixtures up until 26 are rubbish. You're just going to end up wanting to sell Bowen as soon as you bring him in. Maddison's got 3 okay fixtures on the bounce now, but his minutes aren't perfect. I don't even know if he'll start every week. That's actually the issue with Brennan Johnson. It's why Brennan Johnson's in 12th for me. Because I just don't know whether it will be Johnson or Maddison or both. But I don't think it will be both on a consistent basis. And it's very unlikely, I think, that Kulusevski gets benched in many games. But then even with Kulu, only 74 minutes per game over the last 5. So I just feel like with those Spurs assets, like, they're so unpredictable anyway, Spurs. The minutes aren't there. And the fixtures aren't great. They've got like 3 okay fixtures on the bounce. Let me remind myself of them. You can tell this is a video I've done less prep for than normal. But I kind of would, if it was a perfect entry point, I'd be a lot more tempted. So it's, after the Liverpool game, it's Forest, Wolves, Newcastle. 2 of them at home. Forest have been defending great recently. Newcastle have been defending a lot better as well. Would I want to bring in Maddison, Kulusevski or Johnson instead of Gordon or Ahmad or Enzo or Sarr? Not overly. Other players on this list, Martinelli is interesting, as is Trossard, as is potentially Gabriel Jesus and Havertz, by the way, in the forward position. Martinelli is starting most games for Arsenal. He gets the early sub pretty much every game. He might now start on the right, or it could be Jesus on the right, in the absence of Bukayo Saka, assuming that Saka is, of course, out. His data's actually very good, and Arsenal have some really good fixtures, starting this week with Ipswich at home. I would argue maybe Martinelli should be higher on this list, actually, rethinking it, just because if he does start, I'd probably prefer to have him ahead of some of these other options. It's just, does he start? Like, you could see a situation with Jesus on the right and Trossard on the left. Martinelli did finally get his goal. He's not been playing particularly well, but I just worry slightly that in the absence of Saka, the entire Arsenal team will be a lot weaker. Like, Saka is their best player. So, yes, it's less competition, but will the team just be weaker in general? Other assets, Matoma, not sure I'd be looking to bring him in with the way that Brighton are playing. Like 0.32 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 recently. Matoma's just probably not it. And then Kudus is the only other player on this list. Coming off the back of a 9-pointer today. He is playing relatively well, but the data's not brilliant. And as I said with Bowen, I mean, the fixtures just run out. So it's a 1-week punt, really, or you have to just rotate him in and out. But there aren't even any particularly good fixtures that you want to rotate him in for. I am really disappointed in this price point right now because this does feel, like I said, where it could be a really high upside place to invest your money. But when I look at even up to Gordon, all of the players on this list, do you like them more than Sarr, Ahmad and Enzo? Because I don't massively. And then at that point, why would I not save a couple of million and go for those cheap assets? The only ones that I think are worth it is Gordon. I'd be tempted to go out and buy still. And Mbeumo, if you own him, I think you can keep him. But I don't know that I'd go out and buy Mbeumo. And I think if you've got that specific personality type and management style to want to take a punt on Jota or Diaz, depending on minutes in the Spurs game, then I don't mind that as well. And maybe a cheeky shout to Martinelli too. But for me, I'm just not overly interested at this price. Let's now take a look at those expensive options. So guys, just finishing up with those more expensive options, we have 7 players between the price of 8.3 and then 13.5 with Salah. So this is assuming that you want to spend that money. You don't really have anywhere else that you want to redistribute the funds to. I do like this structurally, like keeping that spot there. Like if you want to move back to Saka in the future, then you have that ability to do so because you haven't spread the funds. But equally, if you're sat there without Trent, without Isak, and you're thinking selling Saka to Ahmad gives me the money to then go for Trent in defence, to get from like João Pedro to Isak, well then yeah, I would probably do that, because in all honesty, you might not want Saka back for a while anyway, and arguably getting in the likes of Trent and Isak might be worth it. So don't feel like you've got to stay at this expensive price. And obviously, it should go without saying that if you don't have Salah or Palmer, you've been given a bit of a gift here because you've now got a route to them. With Palmer, it should be relatively easy to find that money. Obviously, if you've got no Salah, you probably means you've got Haaland, and I would still probably sell Haaland ahead of Saka, but it might give you a route to have Salah and Haaland in your team. You just need to obviously find the 3 million. The data for the two of them is unbelievable, and it has been all season. You can see 0.7 across the season, pretty much for both of them. And then they've got exactly the same XG and XA per 90 over the last 5, both sat on 0.94. So they are comfortably the two best assets to own in FPL. They are comfortably the two you should be looking to move to if you don't already have them. After that, I think it's very close between Bruno, Son, Foden, Ødegaard, De Bruyne. They've all got pros, they've all got cons. I think if you're looking at a Man City midfielder, I think I would go Foden over De Bruyne. And maybe you're not, because at the moment, they are playing horribly, Man City. I mean, another absolutely disastrous performance again today against Aston Villa. Rodgers run them absolutely ragged in defence, but going forward, they weren't really creating much either. It's just not working at the moment. Now, with the fixtures coming up, you can see here, according to Fantasy Football Hub, they are first for fixture difficulties. They have the best fixtures in the league over the next 5. So it is definitely there to attack, and it would be an amazing differential if you go for Foden and it comes in. The reason I would go Foden over De Bruyne is just the minutes and the fitness as well. Like, you can see 86 minutes per game over the last 5 for Foden. For De Bruyne, it's 51. De Bruyne is just not fit enough at the moment. His injury record isn't good enough. And whilst his data across the season is remarkably good, it's better than Salah and Palmer, that's per 90, and he doesn't get 90 minutes, and he's not going to start every game. So I feel like if I was going for a Man City mid, I'd go Foden. And I honestly don't mind a punt on Foden. In fact, I quite like it. But you can't sit there and say, oh, I'm so unlucky if it doesn't come in, because City are playing appallingly. Like, you are taking a punt on nothing other than just sheer hope that they turn it around. So maybe not the best perfect player to bring in. I mean, they've got Everton this week, which isn't even an overly great fixture. I still do like it, though. It's the sort of one that I probably prefer that to a Diaz or a Jota, because I think Foden's minutes are probably expected to be slightly better, and the fixtures are arguably better for Man City as well. So I don't mind it. I am tempted, but I have a couple players that I like slightly more. Just very briefly on Ødegaard. I don't mind Ødegaard. I still expect Arsenal to score goals. Ødegaard might now take in-swinging set pieces in the absence of Saka, and he's almost definitely on penalties. So what you're saying is Ødegaard was already an okay asset. He already scores lots of points in FPL. You see that in previous seasons. And you've now given him corners, free kicks, and potentially penalties. I mean, it's great, but who's he creating for right now? I mean, Havertz, they scored goals with Saka off the pitch today, but I feel like without Saka, again, it just weakens their entire attack. And Ødegaard has never had the most goal threat anyway. So I don't mind him, but if I'm paying 8.3 for Ødegaard, I've got Bruno sat there at 8.4. I'm always going to prefer Bruno. That's just me as a preference. I'm a United fan, by the way, so maybe there's some bias there. What do I like about Bruno? I mean, the data's actually not very good. Since Amorim's come in, not very good. Across the season, not very good. It's very similar, actually, to Martin Ødegaard. And I'm sat here saying Ødegaard doesn't have the best data. I just think with Bruno, in the last couple of games, I think Amorim has very much noticed that he is a number 10 and not a number 8. Like, doesn't play very... For Manchester United and for an FPL perspective, we want him in that number 10 role. So I think he'll continue in that number 10 role, especially as Mason Mount is now injured. And I think in that advanced role, with Manchester United starting to tick a little bit more under Amorim, they've got some decent fixtures coming up. I actually really like the punt on Bruno. Now, I am a biased Manchester United fan. I just like the idea of having him. And when I look at, is Bruno worth 5.1 million more than, not 5.1, 3.1 more than Ahmad? Maybe not, but I love the penalties. I like that he does take set pieces. And I like the security of starts. I wouldn't say the security of minutes is like it once was. He doesn't play 90 in every game, but the security of starts is absolutely there with Bruno over this period of games. It just feels like a very good, safe option, and he's 2 million less than Saka. So you're still giving yourself 2 million in the bank to sort of restructure. He's at a really nice price point. So, yeah, I really like Bruno, but I wouldn't sit here and say Bruno is definitely the obvious one. Like everyone's going to pretty much go to Bruno. I can guarantee that now. Saka to Bruno is going to be the most popular transfer. It's the one that I am eyeing up myself. But if you're not feeling it, I wouldn't feel forced into it. I wouldn't feel like you're missing out massively. There are some other really good options. And finishing with Son, who, yes, is quite expensive. And yes, the minutes haven't been there. But look at the data over the last 5 per 90. The returns have been there. Spurs are one of the best attacks in the league, and he can go massive. He's on penalties. If his minutes continue to be okay and he starts every game, he could do a lot of damage, even if he does continue to get some early subs. So I actually don't mind Son. Let me actually look at his minutes specifically, because I obviously have got the 64 minutes per game. But he's had 90 against Fulham, so 62 against City, 90 against Fulham, 33, 90, 45. He's had a couple of 90s in there. Maybe the minutes aren't as bad as they look at first glance, so maybe he's building his fitness up, but it does feel like Son isn't the same talisman that he used to be for Spurs, which is the only concern. And also, the fixtures aren't perfect, are they? Nottingham Forest in 18, Wolves in 19 isn't bad, Newcastle in 20 is all right, and then Arsenal in 21, then Everton in 22. It's not a great run of fixtures. Like the Wolves game, you would say is great, but they're under new management. Maybe he'll tighten them up defensively. I just think for me, I've already got Salah and Palmer, and a lot of people do. So I think at this price, it's probably Bruno, Son, Foden, and I think Bruno just feels like the safest option. It feels like he will return and tick along quite consistently. But I quite like the punt on Foden. Something to consider. But then, like I say, it's just such a massive punt. It's backed by no data, really. Like Man City haven't been attacking well. You're just hoping that with the easier fixtures, something happens where City suddenly become a good attack again, which might not happen. Like we keep saying every week, surely City will turn it around eventually, and they're just not. So, I don't know. I'll leave it there. I think at this more expensive price, for me, Salah, Palmer, and then I just think Bruno's a very safe option. So guys, just finishing up, here is my team and what I'm planning right now. This hat is molting all over my face. Hopefully you appreciate the Christmassy vibe. Make sure to subscribe if you're still watching as well. Drop a like on the video. So I think it's nice and simple for me, right? I've already got Trent. I've already got Isak. I've already got Salah. And I've already got Palmer. So for me, I think if I'm just looking at replacing Saka, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to go all the way down to a cheap midfielder unless I just genuinely think the cheap midfielder is better, because what am I gaining by freeing up the money? Like, freeing up the money from the Saka spot doesn't get me anything extra at the moment. I would probably just be keeping the money in the bank, right? I've already got an Arsenal defender. Like I said, I've already got Trent, I've already got Isak. So for that reason, I think Saka to Bruno makes a lot of sense for me. It's going to be Fernandes, isn't he? I could go Ahmad. I really could. But I like the penalties. I like the security of starts, as I said, which gives me 3 million in the bank. In terms of my transfer plans outside of the Saka move, I kind of want Jackson in for Cunha. Now, I don't know about the Cunha ban as well at the time of me recording this, of course. I'm assuming that Cunha's going to be banned for Boxing Day. And really, the only forwards that I like to replace Cunha is Jackson, really. I don't mind Mateta. I could take a punt on Mateta. But I kind of want Nicholas Jackson, which I can afford now because I've freed up the money by getting Fernandes in for Saka. But that would give me 4 Chelsea players. So if I want Fernandes and I want Jackson, I then have to take a -4 and sell either Sanchez or Enzo. So my 2 options right now are to sell Sanchez to Raya and go double Arsenal defence and then invest a bit more money in my defensive situation, and then I'll have triple Chelsea attack. Or what I'm actually leaning towards, I think Enzo is wonderful. I still think he's the 3rd best cheap midfielder. I don't want to sell Enzo, but I think I want to keep Sanchez because I think Chelsea will keep clean sheets over this spell of fixtures here. I think there's a really good chance for 3 or 4 clean sheets in this period. And it diversifies a bit more than going all in on the Chelsea attack. And because I really like Ismail Assar, what I'm thinking is maybe doing something like that. So it's Saka to Fernandes, Enzo to Sarr, and Cunha to Jackson. Again, I wouldn't take the -4 unless I had to, but I've already got 3 Chelsea assets. The other option is I keep Enzo, and instead of Jackson, I just go for Mateta. People will say, why don't you go for Chris Wood or Raul Jimenez or all of these other players? I don't really like any of them. I think it would be Mateta if I don't go Jackson. I really like this run of fixtures. I like his underlying data. He had a big chance, by the way, against Arsenal. 0.75 XGs accumulated. I think he's on penalties. I really do think Mateta's a decent shout. So what it comes down to is Mateta and Enzo plus 4 points versus Sarr and Jackson. I think I would rather take the 4-point hit and own Sarr and Jackson. Sarr and Jackson is just a better combo, I think, than Enzo and Mateta. But with Enzo and Mateta, you get 1 more penalty taker in Mateta. And I do save the money. And it gives me more money in the bank as well, of course. It is cheaper. 2.6 million in the bank versus what I think is 0.8 if I have Sarr and Jackson. So maybe it's not as like clear-cut as I thought. Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, 0.8. Let me know what you think. So I think Fernandes in for Saka does make a lot of sense. I've got my team selection video tomorrow, so I won't go through it in too much more detail. And then it's Jackson and Sarr versus Mateta and Enzo. And then I just need to think about after that, I'll probably have to start sorting out the defense because I've got like Rico, Lewis, Vandenberg. It's not a perfect situation. So there we go. That's how the team is currently lining up. I reckon we're going to have to end up dealing with Saka. And if we didn't, hopefully it was still useful hearing about the midfielders in FPL. So guys, there you have it. That is the Game Week 18 transfer plans or Bukayo Saka replacement video, essentially. Hopefully that has been helpful for you. And if it has, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. As I said, tomorrow there'll be a team selection video. On Tuesday, there will be FPL therapy. And then on Boxing Day, we will have a deadline stream for Game Week 18. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.